Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to round number one, our best of three series between DeathTacticus and Pollina. This is, interestingly enough, in the loser's bracket. Not really a place many people expected DeathTacticus to be, but well, here we are. We'll have to see if he can pull it out and pull his way back into the main stage through this match. Philithanic here once more with us. Imagine has had a good look at this map with a lot of high prices. So hello, welcome. What do we see?
Yeah, lots of really high prices. There's this one scientist spot over here, which DeathTacticus is instead going to found as an expansive for 22k debt.
An expansive HQ
And
has been founded.
that was the only source of high. No, there was one other high iron over here, but it's not by any water. So Pollina going expansive next to these double lows.
It's a lot of iron for Pollina to grab on HQ1, going for both tiles. Actually, it's going to cancel out of one and instead move into aluminum, having noted that after aluminum started high, she was having a lot of trouble actually buying into that last bit that she needed. Going to actually sell some of it down now. Likely just saving up some cash. Could, however, consider getting aggressive in the black market if she wanted to. Something like a mutiny right now is certainly an option on this iron.
Yeah, mutiny with iron at 50, and looks like it's stabilized. Isn't going to climb a little bit more, but that's going to put DeathTacticus in a little bit of trouble as he only has a small amount of cash. Instead, she's just going to opt and freeze everything.
Works too.
Maybe
DT
DeathTacticus,
gonna
you
be
shouldn't
stuck.
complain about the game being so boring and mutinies won't, black market won't rain down on you. Just a thought.
Oh, yep. This is entirely DeathTacticus' fault. He could have easily avoided this situation if he had wanted to by not just cramming all of his steel and iron right next to each other. But nice for Pollina to notice that, hey, that did happen this game. Maybe I should just
Right.
literally stop my opponent from playing for a minute and a half.
It's a nice big ol' please EMP me now target sitting on DeathTacticus. If he split, it would have been fine. If he founded scientists there, it also would have been fine. Not sure. Maybe he's just having trouble fitting a scientist in that spot because it does jet out a little bit. Maybe that geotherm's in the way.
That is a little strange, but should have been able to find it if he had wanted it. Instead, we're just going to take the other high iron to the south.
So because of that EMP, both players upgrade at roughly the exact same time. Pollina is going into the double iron that she started off with. DeathTacticus is going to have to take a low aluminum. Well, he decides to take a low aluminum, shipping about halfway across the map instead of this high aluminum, which would be shipping 3/4 of the way across the map. So deciding to save some fuel there.
Yeah, not a bad decision. Going to keep himself out of debt potentially. He does have extra claims. He does have the ability to mutiny his opponent's aluminum if he'd like to. There are options here, so just going to rely on a little bit less of it coming in this game.
Pollina going into silicon early is interesting. Silicon is not very high right now.
Pollina having a bit of a similar problem to DeathTacticus. EMP large enough to knock out all of these tiles for a short period of time. Could have been easily avoided if just the base was set up a little bit differently. Both players having that problem in this game.
Extra claim auction going very high, 28k, although both players are still in A or AAA debt. Pollina drops down to single A. So
Yep, that's going to be a lot of debt for that, but should be handleable, should be tolerable. It's also going to leave Pollina up 2 claims total at this point.
Yes, she does have one more claim to use. It'll be interesting to see what she uses that claim on.
Yeah, a little bit awkward right now, trying to figure that out.
One downside with that EMP was the steel mill hadn't constructed yet. But this is a plus for Pollina, so she's able to go out of that and rotate into 2 farms. A single farm would just pretty much only cover her food costs, but a second farm means she'll start to make some money.
Yeah, should be decent money at HQ2. Later on could be an issue once you start getting to to 4 and 5 in particular, 2 farms really not enough to turn any significant profit against your debt. But for now, that should pretty easily be quite a lot of cash. Unfortunately, they are going to be frozen again for about 20 more seconds. Interesting hit, though. DT choosing to go after the steel rather than the food.
Well, Pollina still needs another 16k worth of steel to upgrade. DeathTacticus is actually in the same boat, needing 13k.
But he does have all of his glass bought up, and that is going to be a pretty significant advantage for the time being. Also moving into significantly more steel mills. Those should be nice and profitable for the time being. Gonna need to be careful, though. That power price is starting to get a little bit higher. Both players currently at that B bond rating.
Right. Power is getting high. Fortunately, there are plenty of geotherms. DeathTacticus may even consider putting down a superconductor geotherm, as there are 2 touching his current territory. Could kill that power price very easily if he wanted to.
Indeed he could. Alright, well, Pollina storing up food for the time being. Steel coming back online now. Did add a third mill with a bribe a claim purchase. Something I don't like seeing all that often in 1v1 this early, when there are tools to attack your opponent with, but we'll see how it works out here.
DeathTacticus is deciding to go for both Well, I've changed his mind, only going for one.
Core sample is interesting right now. Difficult to determine exactly how to use it. We don't have that new UI featuring yet. Neither player interested enough for a bit.
So that core sample would have been interesting because carbon is so bad on this map. There's only 14 low tiles, so this little low carbon up here above Pollina's base, maybe try and find a medium there. That would allow you to get into this ridiculous 315 and climbing chem price because of this European colony. It has decided to actually stay a European colony. There are 5 laboratories out.
Yeah, and you can tell that they've been having a pretty significant impact this game. I do believe Chem started at double price, but even so, $324, $325 now, so on and so forth from there. For chems at the moment. Neither player likely going to be looking at a patent lab or optimization center anytime soon with prices like that, but there is a decent profit to be made long term.
Yes, and it does seem like you're having a little bit of issues there, Zoltar, with your ISP. So I see people pointing them over to my stream, which should be up and running. Anyway, back to the game. Pollina has gone into it. Wait, did you mention the geotherm already?
No, you're good. I haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, Pollina's going into some power with the geotherm and the solar panels, and then DeathTacticus has 2 wind turbines. Both players are in about equal amounts of debt. DeathTacticus currently paying a smidgen more off due to the wind turbines not turning off at night.
Well, yep, that is a nice advantage for him, as it turns out. Spy lands from Pollina onto those wind turbines. Wondering if she's going to do anything about it. Mutiny is a pretty simple option, although unfortunately has her solar panel taken away as day hits. So just going to have to take that right back.
This means that Pollina will be paying off more debt due to both the solar panels and the geotherm. Still only a small 600 a second. The other thing is DeathTacticus does not have food, so this is an area where Pollina could try and drive him into not paying off any of his debt whatsoever by pushing the food price higher, at least until DeathTacticus upgrades.
Yep. And DeathTacticus demanding answers for these mutinies for the time being is really trying to make sure that power does not cause a problem for him. Pretty important to be doing when you're only 5,000 debt away from falling into that C rating. Always going to be a very dangerous place to be this early in a 1v1 that looks like it's going for the long haul here.
Nanotech, because it's going for the long haul, and steel is so high. Seems like a great pickup for 16k.
Yeah, but DT decided he absolutely didn't want it once it hit that point. Steel, as you pointed out, is quite expensive for the time being. I am wondering if off-world markets is something people are going to need to consider this game once more. We're seeing a very, very even game so far. Patent Lab's going to be a little bit difficult to make work. Optimization Center is going to be difficult to make work for the time being. So that nanotech could come in handy if that steel price gets too high because people are throwing down such expensive buildings.
Both of our players are moving into chems, and it looks like, okay, DeathTacticus has picked up a source of carbon. Pollina also picking up a source of carbon, so both players have a small amount of carbon coming in. Both of them choosing to ignore this single low tile above their base. Or above Pollina's base, sorry, that was closer. Just
Core sample could have come in handy.
Yes,
Just
core
saying.
sample may have come very in handy.
Worth noting that DT has noticed that Pollina's in the chems, is doing what he can to drive up that fuel price just to keep those profits from being too out of control. But we can see, even with 133 carbon, $200 fuel, these chem refineries with only one adjacency apiece still pulling in $100 a second for Pollina.
Yes, I would like to see Pollina counter by raising the price of food, and it looks like, okay, she has done. She's not selling food anymore. DT, not in any food whatsoever, is losing 224 a second
The black market is
into
online.
food debt.
Yeah, not a pleasant place to be. He is at risk of falling into C rating. Just now, he's going to go ahead and do it. We are a long ways away from a debt tick, from an interest tick. So that's going to be okay, but both players currently have so much cash, they actually need to start thinking about stock as they are looking at potentially upgrading. Going to be interesting to see what happens with that this game.
Pollina is going to decide to, both players are going to mutually defend themselves a little bit, it looks like.
The black market is
Gonna
open
make
for
sure that
business.
there's no shenanigans this game, especially. And I do like the decision to make sure to go ahead and buy into stock before you upgrade. Even if you had the cash to do it after you upgrade, well, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive from your assets being higher. So good to go ahead and secure just enough that you're gonna be safe. Pollina lets it go for 9, just an error there.
Yeah, a little bit of an error. She's probably thinking about putting down her claims. Other than that error, she is slightly ahead of DeathTacticus in both debt at a B versus C rating and cash on hand by about 40k.
Yeah, things looking good for Pollina thus far, but HQ5 is where games like this are usually decided. It is even enough that these late game moves could be very, very important. Gonna have to see what the players each decide they want to use to end the game. Pollina moving into an optimization center and a hacker array. Meanwhile, we haven't seen a late game plan except for making money out of DT just yet. I do want to point out that it's HQ5 for both players. They're both expansive, and there's a triple adjacency Pleasure Dome location. I'm really disappointed in everybody right now.
Yes, other thing I want to point out is DeathTacticus has opted to not auto-sell power. Well, Pollina has been auto-selling power, so because of that, the power price has been a lot higher for Pollina than it should be, and she's been able to pull into an A bond rating.
Time to start improving.
Yeah, she's been doing just fine, especially with having all this food. DT's been getting a lot of debt off that, and she hasn't had to deal with that this game.
Pollina is going for a double adjacency optimization center. It is just finished constructing. It is not doing anything. DeathTacticus finally noticing that triple adjacency Pleasure Dome spot.
Yeah, good to pick up on. And let's see, DeathTacticus is also moving into a patent lab. Doesn't look like he has anything queued up just yet, so we'll have to see what he values most this game. There are a lot of options here for what could be powerful. Virtual reality is an obvious tool, but thinking machines could be important as well. Even maybe carbon scrubbing, although with both players committing to so much of it, not so necessary. Perpetual motion can be what DT lands on.
So Pollina's going into a mistake for her hack. She's hacking up aluminums. Now both players have had aluminum this entire time. DeathTacticus
Only has 40 in the bank
Okay,
right now. I actually just sold out of it, too.
well, never mind. It's not that bad anymore.
Well, it's
That's
interesting
actually-
to consider that both players recently upgraded, and DT has been on just that one low aluminum this entire game. So, it seems reasonable that he wouldn't have too large a stockpile, and it looks like it'll work out.
Although the game's deciding to preempt the hack by auctioning an aluminum tile.
Yep.
Is this
Nobody's
far lens,
interested.
though?
Bidding
Not
closed.
too surprised that nobody's interested in it, but aluminum is still 113, and that is the
black
true
market
price.
is open for
Oh, no, it
business.
isn't. Polina's 330.
Yeah, she has a nice big stockpile
The
stored
black
up for
market is
this
online.
hack. Gonna want to see another hack out of her before too long. A little harder to use in a game where both players are expansive because your opponent is allowed to be in so many different resources at once, but still should be able to find a place. For example, Kim's looking very nice right now against an opponent who's working this patent lab that Pollina potentially doesn't know about. Spies have managed to miss it thus far.
DeathTacticus going into thinking machines, noticing that oxygen is a great launch right now. 460 is the Offworld price, which
Patent
isn't
lab
that
is
high,
ready
but
to
the
begin
onworld
research.
price is so cheap that you make 38k a launch.
Yep, so Thinking Machine's going to be a nice tool for DT to pick up. Already has picked up that perpetual motion. Still not running much of a surplus in power right now because one of his wind turbines was taken away from him. Once he has all three, though, should have more than enough to cover costs for the moment, even with that Pleasure Dome online. I will say, I am a little surprised
The
to see
black
Thinking
market
Machines
is open for
out
business.
in front of virtual reality, but it might have been stirred on by seeing your opponent go into a patent lab as well.
Pollina ends the sort of, freeze in the black market war, for lack of a better term, and both players EMP each other.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
just decent
Pollina
hits.
is going to lose out on the Thinking Machines rush. She immediately goes into Superconductor. His power has crept back up in price.
Yeah, has Superconductor and Virtual Reality queued up at the moment. Not going to work out too well for the Virtual Reality, but should acquire Superconductor. DT himself finally going ahead and picking up Virtual Reality. He is the one with the Pleasure Dome down right now. Pollina, certainly, regardless of what happens with this patent, going to want to get a Pleasure Dome down as well, just to cut into those profits, if nothing else.
Pollina
Don't know if that's
still
what we're going to see.
has been maintaining the slight cash lead. It has grown just a little bit, 50k, back to 40k once again. So both players are keeping pace with each other, and neither has found just
Can't let
yet
them get this.
a
Bid now
move
before
to
it's
vault
too
them
late.
over the other player.
No, pretty even games still. These patents could start making the difference. And Pollina, of course, is in a few optimizations at this point. Only has
Congratulations.
2 done, third about to wrap up on these chem refineries, which will make sure that the optimization center can stay functional, at least for the long term. But electronics starting to look a bit tempting. Of course, there is ever that oxygen launch that Pollina actually, both players have already queued up oxygen launches at this point.
Both players moving into the off-road market at roughly the same time. DeathTacticus knows about Pollina's off-road market due to the spy. Pollina,
Does have a spy
okay,
there.
that is spy
It's a little
there.
hard to see, but
It
there is a
is.
spy on
Okay,
that
both
tile.
players know, which
Market
would
is
explain why
open for
Pollina
business.
moved into hers immediately after DeathTacticus moved into his. DeathTacticus, a little bit of a stock war going on here. DeathTacticus buys 3 of his own stock, Pollina purchasing in 2 of herself and 2 of DT's. See if Pollina decides to sell anything down to defend herself more, or if just going to choose to leave it as it is for the time being.
Yeah, a little bit of a difficult thing to figure out. One thing that I don't like from both players right now, when you see off-world markets come up like this, you want to be on the ball on your stock purchase, on your black market purchases, excuse me. Make sure you're using that cooldown every single time, because you can store up an EMP, a network virus, a mutiny, a goon squad, so on and so forth. Make sure that you have as many options for hitting that as possible, especially in a game with network viruses available. And both players have just been a little bit lax in making sure their cooldown is up and refreshing all the time.
DeathTacticus does have the decent black market advantage with both Thinking Machines and a Mutiny stored up, versus Pollina only has a network virus.
Yeah, almost certainly going to want to grab up a Mutiny, going to want to grab up potentially a Goon Squad. Not a happy situation to be in when your opponent has Thinking Machines stored up and you don't. DT, by the way, now with this small cash edge, stock is even in stock purchase between both players. Pollina with a slightly higher price, due to having about
The
70k
black
less
market
debt.
is open for business.
Yes, I would like to see this optimization center online for Pollina. It's been off for a while.
Offworld shipment
She's
launched.
she
Look
has
at
gotten
all the
4,
money.
but right now moving to electronics would be a great thing to optimize, considering its price is so high. Perhaps also optimizing some oxygen or food.
Yeah. All of those
Choosing to
sound
go
like
into
reasonable
both
options.
electronics and food, just noticing that the optimization center is offline.
Well, DT's moving into that second Offworld. It did turn into one of those games. He's probably going to feel pretty comfortable doing that. His opponent has a fair stockpile of cash, but not huge. And of course, 3 of his own stock purchased up in addition to the initial 5 block. He is going to want to push this game long with his thinking machines. Make sure that he has every opportunity to abuse this advantage.
Pollina responding in kind by moving into a second Offworld of her own.
The
The
Offworld
difference
market
in
is
this
finished
case,
and awaiting orders.
in addition to DeathTacticus with the
Launch
thinking
of
machines as you mentioned,
Fridays
is
Payoffs
Pollina's does not have a
disappointed
spy
we
in
all.
DeathTacticus Offworld, but did spot exactly where it is, so we are going to start having our mutiny war.
Yep, network viruses begin landing to tear through these goon squads. 30-second protection for each tile that hit, but I imagine we're just going to see all the goon squads blast through basically immediately with this one network virus. Then it'll be interesting to see how these mutinies start panning out.
So, both players have the same number of mutinies stored up at this point in time. However, Pollina still has another 30 seconds on her cooldown. While Black DeathTacticus could easily purchase one. The mutiny wars have started. Mutinied right back. DeathTacticus is going to win out because of that black market cooldown, although Pollina can take it back in 12 seconds.
Yep. Interesting thing to note here, by the way, is that this Offworld market was the only building connecting all the rest of these buildings to the HQ. And so now, as this market is being taken away, not only do you lose your Offworld market, bad enough as it is, you're also in a situation where you're suddenly having to ship a little extra, your superconductor isn't working for the geotherm, just a bit of an odd situation for Pollina to have to deal with.
Yes, DeathTacticus has been able to pull into a small cash lead, which is turning into a 1-tick stock lead. You can see there it's about 50k, so a little bit more than a small cash lead. Other than that, things are still very even for both players.
Yeah, 50k is enough to potentially win out this game if he can sustain that lead, as his price, once again, not much lower than Pollina's. Pollina needs 452 at the moment to clean this up. DT needing 479. Also looks like DT has the edge when it comes to launches. For the time being, he was faster in each of these Offworlds, and that's really helping him out, combined with these mutinies that are occasionally getting in and getting time taken away from Pollina. Pollina not able to respond to this one immediately. And a mutiny that lands like this can turn an entire game. Every single second is such a huge deal when it comes to these Offworld markets once the game is pushed to this stage. It is a big problem for Pollina to have this market taken away for this long.
Right, she does have the cooldown up. It is 50k, but it is worth it to take that just to keep Black DeathTacticus from getting that free third launch off. But he is able.
Yeah, it's going to be too little too late at this point. 85% DT on Pollina. I think we've seen Thinking Machines turn this game. Pollina only now purchasing the mutiny, and, well, you're already basically dead, so that's not going to make much of a difference. DT, he is at the 100%, waiting for, it looks like, just a moment to sell out, maybe waiting on the launch. But he has more than enough at this point to end the game. All he has to do is get all these canceled, sell down, and there we are.
DT takes game number 1 on a very even game right until the very end. Well played by both players. Just unfortunately, some really small mistakes that Pollina made, not going into Patent Lab quick enough, and that sort of swung the game into DeathTacticus' favor.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it was possible to counter the Thinking Machines play just by consistently being on top of the black market, having the mutinies saved up. It's not going to be perfect because you end up having to pay a little more than your opponent for each mutiny. But when it's mutinies as the tool rather than dynamite, you can create a situation where the Thinking Machines isn't as hurtful as it might normally be. But unfortunately, that whole, even I think we only saw one launch truly swing this game on this mutiny. Although with all the mutinies put together, it might have been closer to 2. And you can see what a huge difference that is in the amount of profit you actually pull in.
Yes. Yes, indeed. DeathTacticus also looks like he sold more than Pollina, about 2.5K more worth of resources, looking at this auto sold section on the balance sheet. In part moving into different markets than Pollina, recognizing the price switch. The prices were really high in electronics and moving into that before Pollina did. He also made a ridiculous 209K off of entertainment, and Pollina never challenged that Pleasure Dome, never blew it up.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest problems this game is once the patent lab came down for Pollina, we saw the superconductor selection. I really did not like that in particular. The idea of Thinking Machines was nice, but unfortunately the spy didn't catch DT's patent lab, didn't know she was going to miss it. There was an opportunity at that point to potentially grab virtual reality, get a claim, get the Pleasure Dome down, and at least cut off that source. But with both virtual reality and Thinking Machines being so hugely impactful this game, and DT picking up both, very difficult thing for Pollina to compensate for.